Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani. It's good to have you here with me on this Tuesday, the day after Labor Day. Hope you had an amazing weekend with your family, with your friends, and I hope you took the time to rest and enjoy yourself. But we're back in the saddle. We're starting a new series, and we may be chewing on this for quite some time because it's a problem that really has taken over many people's relationships. Now, many people have been falsely diagnosed, so we're going to really unpack what sexual addiction is. And we're going to talk about the dark world of sexual addiction and what that looks like. But before we get started, as we do every single morning, we want you to like, share, and subscribe. Let your people know that we are live. Let them know, because there's so many people who are struggling with this situation and are looking for guidance, looking for help, and we want to be able to supply that to them. So bring us into your community. Last chance weekend, this weekend, excited about it, ready to make impact in the lives of others. Feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in that. And once again, as we've been mentioning, the Phoenix Awards Gala, listen, there's a countdown taking place. We have 33 days left. And if you haven't gotten your tickets, I'm telling you, get out of your head, get out of your excuses, stop coming up with reasons and rationalizations and justifications for why you can't do it. You do what you want to do, and you figure out a way to do it. And this is a place that you want to be at on October 7th. So no matter where you're coming from, California, Oregon, Washington State, Mississippi, Alabama, we can go down the list, but we want you in the building because it's going to be an incredible experience. All right. So make sure you do that. Listen, we're going to dive right into this conversation. As we've talked about before, infidelity rears its ugly head in a multitude of ways. And generally speaking, I have in times past talked about the 4 different types of an affair. One would be what we call the one-night stand. Then you would have emotional entanglement. Then you would have the open marriage or the marital void. But today what we're going to focus on, and for quite some time, is sexual compulsion. It is a certain type of an affair when someone has an addictive personality and they're driven and consumed and governed by a desire that they cannot control. A sexual desire. And it is a type of an affair. Okay. And I want to draw that distinction because a lot of times we may falsely diagnose someone as being a sex addict because they cheat multiple times, and their reason or motive or why for their multiple affairs may not be because of some type of compulsory type of behavior that they cannot control. It may stem from something else. So we want to zone in on the difference between these two for just a second. And I think it's important to really identify the difference. Like, for instance, many people who do cheat, either there was a void, an emotional void, an activity-based void, something that was lacking in the relationship. They weren't really connected. When faced with pressure within their own rationalization, they justified stepping out for whatever reason. It wasn't healthy. It harmed the relationship. They realized the error of their ways. They've come to a place where they're ready to heal and restore and rebuild what has been destroyed. That's a different type of thing, right? But when you're dealing with a compulsion, usually we say that when a person cheats, it's either because of something that's going on inside of them or something going on inside of the relationship, or a combination of the two. But when it comes to this type of thing, it is definitely something going on inside of the person. That one's desire to cheat or drive to cheat has nothing to do with their spouse. It's not about not getting enough sex. It's not about, how their spouse treats them. It's not about any of those things, because this is an issue most likely that they had prior to I do. They had this issue prior to Hi, My Name Is. It was something that they carried within them for quite some time. And if we look throughout the annals of time and really look at their personal history, we will see evidence of this. And so I think this is important because oftentimes there's a blame game, a blame shifting that takes place where the betrayed spouse oftentimes, and you can hear it in their line of questioning, they begin to blame themselves for their spouse's affair. Was I not pretty enough? Was I not handsome enough? Was I not tall or short enough? Did I not have the right body for you? Did I not supply you with enough sex? Did you not enjoy the type of sex we had? Did I didn't cook? I didn't clean? Like all these different things. What was I not doing? How did I not show up? And so what happens is they take on the burden of their spouse's behavior, not realizing that it has absolutely nothing to do with them and entirely everything to do with this insatiable desire, this thirst, this longing, this craving, right? This appetite that cannot be satisfied within the person, the addict, right? The addiction. And so many people don't like that word. It's a loaded term. It's a term that we run from, right? Because it has a negative stain and stigma attached to it. And so who wants to admit that they are an addict? There's plausible deniability, some would say. I'm not an addict. Well, we want to define what it is. So number one, if there is a behavior that you're engaging in that you cannot control, you cannot manage, that is a sign that there is a habitual behavior that's governing your life. See, we can hold on to the word habit because it doesn't have the same residue as addict. But an addiction is a habit-forming behavior that you have no control over. And so if we look at it from that perspective, we'll notice how, wow, maybe there are some things I am addicted to. Like you can be addicted to food. We understand that food addiction is real, and we see the evidence of it in people. You can be addicted to drugs. That's real. We see the evidence of that in people. An alcoholic addiction, right? It is real. We can see the evidence of that in people, but somehow when it comes to sex, what we do is we try to discredit what this addiction is. And so we replace it with, I just have a high sex drive. That's all. And what's wrong with that? Is anything wrong with that? Well, having a high sex drive is completely different than having an addiction. And I think it's important that we take the time to really dig deep into this, because once we can understand what this thing really is, then we can come up with a plan of how to overcome it. Does that make sense? Think about it like this. An addiction, let's just simplify it. I just took some notes here I want to share with you. If it is causing a negative or unwelcoming problems in your life, and yet you return to the behavior anyway, it is a sign that it is addiction. For instance, many people who are addicts or have an addiction, it impacts their personal life in a multitude of ways. So not only am I physically harmed by the alcohol, by the drug, by the food, right? By the sex. There are other consequences. Sometimes there are legal consequences. My legal status is impacted by my dark behavior. And so because I engaged in this, now maybe I got arrested, or maybe now there's a warrant out, or maybe now I'm a sex offender because of my behaviors and what it's caused me to do, right? There are legal consequences for my behaviors. Maybe there's a consequence to the relationship, because of course it's a breach and violation of trust, right? It creates a complete separation. Usually when someone has some type of sexual addiction, they live life in isolation. They operate in secrecy. They are stealth. They are clandestine, right? They live in silos. They compartmentalize. And what happens is it creates an emotional disconnect between the couple. So there are consequences on the relationship. Then it could even impact your career. We know many people who have either lost their careers, right? They were fired from their jobs, or a lot of their private secret deeds came out and they were revealed on the job. A lot of times when you are driven by an addiction, you spend so much time in that addiction that it can literally sabotage the time that needs to be spent in other places. So I find myself always taking longer lunch breaks than I should. I find myself calling in sick for the day because I'm driven by a passion and it has to be fulfilled, and it prioritizes work, right? So therefore, it impacts my career. And if it impacts my career, it impacts my finances because now I'm making less. I mean, think about a person who's addicted to gambling. They're constantly like, they just can't, and they lose all types of money, right? Well, whether it's a sex addiction, drug addiction, alcoholic addiction, food addiction, my monies are going to a particular thing to feed this behavior. In terms of sex addiction, it may be pornography, getting magazines, watching certain movies, paying for sex, whatever it may be. So a lot of that income that should have been used for the household is now going out and impacting that family in such a negative way. It can impact your health, right? We get that. Sickness, disease, all types of conditions that you're now suffering from because of this type of behavior. So sexual behavior, when your time and your energy, and your focus is consumed with the thing where it should properly be displaced into other areas, it is a sign that you are an addict, okay? When a person typically says, this is the last time, this is my last time. I don't care if it's eating a pack of cookies. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You hear, right? This is my last pack, right? Or it's my last cigarette, my last cigar, my last drink. Listen, last time I'm going to pay for this sex, right? Whatever it is. But somehow you find yourself right back to the very place that you swore, that you made an internal vow within yourself, a declaration before God, promises to family and friends that you will never, yet you find yourself right back there. It is a sign that you have an addiction. And so when you have this type of an addiction, it can tremendously impact your marriage in a tremendous way. Listen, guys, we're just getting started, okay? So I want you to hang tight. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. I want you to see a quick commercial about the GALA coming up and the Last Chance Weekend and a few other things. And I promise we're going to go deeper. So stay right there. Be right back. guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. We're talking about the dark, secret world of sex addiction. And I hope that you're getting something out of this conversation. I came across a very powerful image that I want to share with you. Hold on, let me put this on the screen. Here we go. Hypersexuality, okay? So if we take a look at this, there are types of activities that are associated with hypersexuality or sex addiction. To the left, masturbation, right? Pornography, cyber sex, phone sex, strip clubs, cheating on a partner. We go to the right side. There's different names associated with these, right? So we see compulsive masturbation, compulsive sexual behavior, erotomania, problematic hypersexuality, sexual compulsivity, sexual dependency. And as you can see, that there are several images there that really indicate this type of behavior. And so this is a serious problem here. It's a serious problem because I think it's important for us to understand that there's a particular way that you have to overcome this particular issue. And so if we just limit sexual addiction to just, I feel horny, then we're limiting what this is really about. So many people have said, well, what about if I take antidepressants? Okay, what if I take some type of hormonal drug that will lower my desire for sex? While that can help, because it seems like depending upon where you go to for help, people want you to just pop a pill and then everything will be all right, right? So we see that medication really is prescribed to so many people depending upon the type of person that you're getting help from. But medication alone cannot do it. It takes a number of different things. Another thing that you would really need to do is embrace a long-term addictive-based counseling process, right? So whether we're talking about working one-on-one with a counselor or some type of 12-step program that would aid. Now, for anyone who knows me and has been listening to the show long enough, not only am I an infidelity recovery specialist, but prior to even really delving into this, I was the director of care and recovery programs at a major ministry. And so oftentimes people who are addicted to all types of things, including sex, will come through these programs. And I believe that there is a lot of value in 12-step programs. I absolutely do. You have essays, Sex Anonymous. There's a lot of value in these programs. And I think that anybody struggling with an addiction with that should absolutely do it. But I don't believe that 12-step programs are a silver bullet. I don't think it's the end all, the be all. I think it can help you in your journey, but it should be coupled with something else. And so while there is this awakening, right, this understanding of this particular struggle, I think that for many, not all, for many 12-step programs, it gets you to embrace the idea of, I am an addict. Okay, so think about a person who has been an alcoholic for quite some time, and they've been clean for 346 days. Part of their daily confession is to say, well, I'm still an addict. I'm just 346 days clean. And I get where it comes from, but I think it's counterproductive long term because you begin to take on an identity that's attached to a behavior. Because if I am an addict, then what do addicts do? Right? Addicts engage in certain types of behaviors. So if my deeply embedded belief system, my subconscious mind, my psyche is convinced that this is what I am, I'm naturally going to do what is attached to who I am. We are not human doings, we are human beings. And if I be an addict, then I do what addicts do. Does that make sense? And so that's where I think the 12-step programs kind of get it off. And I think you have to take on a new belief, a new identity. Like, for instance, as a believer, when you come into the knowledge of Christ and you get saved, you become a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things become new. And so likewise, there needs to be an awakening of who you truly are. You need to be transformed and you need to become new. And the same process, I believe, exists for the individual who's struggling with any type of an addiction. But going back to the drive, for those of us who have just limited it to a desire to have sex and I'm horny all the time and all I do is think about sex, that's not necessarily addiction alone. I want to read something to you that's really powerful and gives tremendous insight. It says sexual addiction is not just a problem of being too horny or wanting sex too often. Sexual addiction is a disorder where a person uses cruising. Think about it, when you're cruising in your car and you're looking. They use cruising. They use flirting. Come on. They use fantasy and intrigue. And they use all these types of things and sex itself as a way of managing and tolerating feelings and underlying emotional conflicts. So because there are certain things going on in my heart and in my mind and in my soul, and because I have certain feelings and emotions that I haven't learned how to properly manage, I will use sex to medicate the feeling or the emotions. In fact, we know that in a normal relationship, sexual fulfillment is defined as an emotional need. If a person who has sex as an emotional need goes without it for too long, what impact does that have on their emotions? Okay, think about that for a second. So now let's put it in the context of an addiction. If I have an emotion or a feeling or a thought that suggests I'm not man enough and I want to be a real man, well, how do I express my manhood? Well, obviously through sex. And so if I don't feel like I'm good enough, but when I engage in sex, it gives me validation for being a man, I will use sex as a medication, right, to deal with this emotional conflict that I'm having internally. Interestingly enough, a lot of people who are driven into all types of unhealthy behaviors that sabotage their life, their health, their relationships, so on and so forth, oftentimes they're driven by insecurities. You know, they don't feel validated. There are inadequacies that they struggle with. There's a poor concept or perception of oneself, and the drive for sex makes them feel, makes them think, makes them experience something that they believe they cannot be outside of that particular encounter. So if I'm looking for validation, then I will, and let's just say I can't get it from my wife or my husband alone, or let's say that I do. If I'm consumed with this need for validation, even when I'm getting it from my spouse, for me, it's not enough. I need it from someplace else. And I will go in any direction and connect with anyone or anything in order to feel what I struggle to feel outside of the experience. So the experience in itself, the act in itself, taps into an emotional vacancy, if you will, that for a temporary period of time is now full and filled. And then when the act is over and I release, I sink back down to that low place. Think about drugs. When we get high and then all of a sudden we crash back down and feel low again. And so we're chasing a feeling. We've said this before. An addiction is simply an individual chasing a feeling, and connecting with something externally makes me feel a particular way internally. Now, that is nothing that a spouse can solve. A spouse can't look good enough. A spouse can't serve enough. A spouse can't accommodate enough. A spouse can't have sex enough. A spouse can't do anything enough to deal with the void that exists within that person. So when people say things like, babe, it wasn't you, it was me. Like back in the day when we were here that, oh, it wasn't you, it was me. We would be like, that's a cop out. Like, you're just trying to let me down easy. You're just trying to make me feel good. But literally that is the case. It is not you. It is me. And so I've got to get help. And so I think that more sex will solve my problem. If I just have more sex, I won't feel this way. But what you're doing is you're taking an external thing, trying to heal an internal issue that cannot be healed. And so you need other things And so this is why the counseling process is so critically important. So many people, when you really study addicts, there's low self-worth, there's low self-value, there's low self-esteem. There's so many things that they're struggling from that drive them to do the things that they do. Man, we're just getting started here. Just getting started. Listen, we're going to go do a quick commercial break. Be right back before we close this show. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org. Hey everybody, Hassani and Danielle here. I'm so excited. Look at us. Look at where we at. Look at where we at. We are at the Hilton Alpharetta, looking at this room before the incredible transformation that's about to take place on October 7th. Walls draped, stage up, lights, camera, action. And we want y'all to be there.
Are you going to be here?
Come on, get your tickets. It's October 7th. You don't want to miss this event. It is the Phoenix Awards Gala. It is our first inaugural, and we're just getting started. But we starting hot.
Oh yeah,
we're jumping out this gate like never before.
We believe either you go hard or you go home.
Go hard,
we're not going to be home. We're going to be in this
hard or
house
go home.
where you need to be.
Come on,
So let's get it.
we want to see you on October 7th. Go to get your tickets at couplesacademy.org. We'll see you there.
All right, guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. We're talking about the dark world of sexual addiction. Now, when many people think of an addiction, they usually think of it from a physical perspective, that there's a craving, a longing, a desire, just a hunger, a drive that exists within my body. And so therefore, I need something to address my physical being, my physical self, that if I could just get my physical self under control, then everything will be all right. But even though sex is a physical act, it involves and incorporates every aspect of your being. And we are not just physical beings. We are spiritual beings housed in a physical body, and we possess a soul. So we are spirit, we are soul, we are body. All three of those components make up who we are. And so your addiction doesn't just exist in your body. Oftentimes the addiction exists in your soul. Now the soul is where the mind, the will, the emotions, the thoughts, the intellect, the imagination, all those things reside in the area of your soul. So you could see how an addiction can be a soulish experience, and based upon what's going on in my soul, in my imagination, in my feelings, in my all of these different things, it then drives my body to seek out what it desires. Does that make sense? So you see the combination and the connection between the soul aspect of yourself and the physical aspect of yourself. But let me tell you something. Life is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. See, on this natural plane, we experience life based upon our senses, what we can see, touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, all of those different things. We use sensory knowledge. The spirit realm is not perceived through these physical eyes, these physical ears, this physical nose, this physical mouth, this physical touch. No, it's a spiritual thing. And so it's invisible. You cannot see it, but it's real. Matter of fact, it's even more real than what we experience in this natural realm. That's a whole nother conversation that we plan on going into when we begin to unpack the spiritual side of sex, the spiritual side of addiction. You will be, listen, we're going to peel your cap off with so much information that it will cause a transformation on the inside of you. And I'm going to tell you something, that if you try to medicate it through physical means alone, through soulish means alone, then you're missing a major part, dare I say the most important part of this process. And so we're just getting started, guys. Tune in tomorrow as we go into part 2 of this dark world of sexual addiction. See you tomorrow. Take care.